Last night's nightmare still haunts me, a vivid tapestry of fear and confusion. Sharing it feels like walking through that terror all over again, but I need to get it out. Be warned, this is not for the faint of heart. My dream began on an isolated, fog-shrouded island. The air was thick with salt and mystery. I was standing on a rugged shoreline, the ocean's roar a distant, constant background noise. The island was covered in dense, gnarled forests that seemed ancient, untouched. The trees whispered secrets as the wind rustled through their leaves, sending shivers down my spine. Compelled by an unknown force, I ventured deeper into the forest. The ground was uneven, roots snaking across the path like twisted veins. A feeling of profound isolation enveloped me, as if I had stepped into a forgotten world. The further I walked, the more disoriented I became. The forest seemed to shift and change around me, the path twisting in impossible ways. Suddenly the trees gave way to a clearing, and there stood a decrepit, vine-covered mansion. It looked like it had been abandoned for centuries, its walls crumbling, windows broken, the once grand structure now a skeleton of its former glory. I felt drawn to the mansion, each step towards it increasing the pounding of my heart. As I crossed the threshold, the air grew colder, heavier. The mansion was a labyrinth of corridors and rooms, each more dilapidated than the last. The wallpaper was peeling, the floorboards creaked, and the air was thick with dust. Then, out of the shadows, she appeared. A woman, her hair wild and matted, her gown tattered and stained with the passage of time. She stood still for a moment, her eyes hollow. Then, with a sudden, unnatural speed, she lunged at me. Her hands were cold and strong as she pushed me against a wall, her face inches from mine. I tried to scream, to fight, to run, but my body was paralyzed, frozen in a grip of terror. Her eyes bore into me, a mixture of rage and despair. "Please stop," I managed to whimper, but my plea was lost in the silence of the mansion. I woke up in my bed, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. The fear lingered, palpable and suffocating, as if her touch had been real. The memory of the dream was vivid, the emotions raw. I lay there, alone, my husband already off to work, the echoes of the dream reverberating through the empty house. I've never had a dream that left me feeling so terrified, so utterly trapped. Last night I endured a sleep paralysis episode so harrowing that it seared into my memory. I feel a knot of fear in my stomach as I recount it, but I have to share. The dream, or perhaps the nightmare, began subtly. I was in my own bed, or so it seemed, enveloped in the soft cocoon of my blankets. The room was bathed in the eerie pre-dawn light, that grey time when the world exists in a half-light, half-shadow state. Everything was exactly as I left it before sleep, but there was a feeling, an unsettling sensation that something was amiss. I tried to sit up, to shake off the unease, but my body wouldn't respond. It was as if I were encased in invisible restraints, holding me down to the bed. Panic fluttered in my chest, a bird trapped in a cage, as I struggled against this unseen force. My breaths came in short, sharp gasps, the only sound in the otherwise silent room. That's when I saw it, a shadow, darker than the surrounding gloom, standing by my bedroom door. It was a shapeless, shifting mass like smoke given form. My heart pounded against my ribcage, a frantic drumbeat of terror. I wanted to scream, to call out for help, but my voice was a prisoner trapped within me. The shadow began to move, gliding across the room with a slow, deliberate grace. It was a predator, and I was its helpless prey. I could feel a coldness emanating from it, a chill that seeped into my bones. My mind raced, thoughts tumbling over each other in a chaotic dance of fear and confusion. Was this a dream, a hallucination, or something far more sinister? As the shadow drew nearer, I could discern a faint whispering sound like the rustle of dry leaves. It hovered over me, a dark cloud of malevolence. I felt a pressure on my chest, as if it were pressing down on me, squeezing the air from my lungs. Tears streamed down my cheeks, the only part of me that seemed able to move. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the shadow receded. The pressure lifted and I could breathe again. The room lightened as the first rays of dawn filtered through the curtains, chasing away the remnants of the nightmare. I lay there for what felt like hours, afraid to close my eyes, afraid of what might be waiting in the darkness. The experience left me shaken, the terror still lingering like a bad aftertaste. I've read about sleep paralysis, about the shadows and figures people see, but nothing could have prepared me for the raw fear, the feeling of utter helplessness. Last night I experienced a sleep paralysis episode that has left me deeply shaken, the images and emotions still vividly etched in my mind. Sharing this feels like reliving that terror, but I need to get it off my chest. The nightmare began innocuously enough. I was lying in my bed, the familiar contours of my room dimly lit by the moonlight seeping through the curtains. A sense of tranquility pervaded the air, the kind that accompanies deep, restful sleep. But then, an inexplicable sense of dread began to creep over me, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. As this unease grew, I tried to sit up, to move, to escape the growing sense of foreboding. But my body was unresponsive, paralyzed in a state between sleep and wakefulness. I was trapped within myself, a prisoner in my own bed. My heart started to race, pounding against my chest as a wave of panic washed over me. That's when I saw her, a woman dressed in black standing at the foot of my bed. She was like a shadow, a wraith plucked from the deepest recesses of nightmare. Her dress was long and tattered, the fabric seeming to absorb the faint light, her face obscured by a veil of darkness. The air around her felt colder, charged with a malevolent energy. She began to move towards me, her steps silent yet filled with a terrifying intent. As she drew closer, I could see her more clearly, the pale, almost translucent skin of her face, her eyes dark hollows in the dim light. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my voice was trapped, a silent cry in a frozen body. The woman in black reached out a hand, long fingers ending in ragged nails. She was close now, so close I could feel the chill emanating from her. Her hand hovered just above my chest, and I could feel a pressure there, as though she was pushing down on me without even touching me. I was engulfed in fear, a terror so profound that it felt like I was drowning. My mind raced with questions. Who was she? What did she want? But no answers came, only the overwhelming presence of this spectral figure. Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she vanished. The pressure lifted and I could breathe again, gasping for air as if I'd been underwater. The room returned to normal, the moonlight no longer seemed so ominous, and the sense of dread dissipated. I lay there for a long time, too afraid to move, even as the paralysis faded. The experience felt so real, so visceral, that it was hard to believe it was just a dream. When morning finally came, I was exhausted, the night's terror having drained me of all energy. I've heard of sleep paralysis before, of the hallucinations and the sense of an ominous presence, but nothing could have prepared me for the sheer terror of facing the woman in black, the feeling of being utterly helpless in her grasp. If anyone knows why this happens, why our own minds conjure such horrors, please share. I'm afraid of going to sleep now, afraid that she might return. How do I fight something that seems so real, yet is born from the depths of my own subconscious?